Hello, everyone. My name is Deanna, and I'm from Alarm Phone Brighton.
Hi, everybody. I am Hela from the Tunis team Alarm Phone.
And today we're going to talk about women on the move, women in the central Mediterranean, and our work with Alarm Phone.
So Alarm Phone is a project which was initiated in October 2014 by many activists in Europe and also Northern Africa. So it's a self-organized hotline for refugees who are in distress in the Mediterranean Sea. So we offer to both people who are in distress an additional option to make their SOS noticeable. And we also document the situation, inform Coast Guards, and when necessary, we mobilize additional rescue support in real time. So this way we can at least, to a certain extent, put pressure on responsible rescue entities to avert pushbacks and other forms of human rights violations against refugees and migrants at sea. So this is the general work of Alarm Phone. But sometimes each team has a different work to do along with this hotline, which is whether, as for example, in Tunisia, we document also on human rights violations which are made, whether by the government, we communicate with people who have been intercepted to Tunisia and pushed back also to Tunisia and to comment about their situation. We distribute some safety at sea flyers and also necessary information for people who want to ask for asylum in Europe or in other places. So we are involved in 3 regions, the Aegean Sea, the Central Mediterranean Sea, and the Western Mediterranean Sea, which is, we are volunteers, most of whom have been active at internal borders of Europe for many years in networks such as Welcome to Europe, Afrique, Europe Interact, Borderline Europes, and also, for example, No Border Morocco and Watch the Med. So we are based in different cities, me in Tunis, for example, others in Palermo, Zurich, Brighton, Amsterdam, Tanger, Oujda. So it's a transnational network. It's not only so we have different experiences, different backgrounds, and with these differences, we made this network alive. Our goals, like in the short term, the project focuses on making sure that rescue missions are being carried out and also to, as I said, prevent human rights violation. But at the same time, we know that the deaths of refugees and migrants at the sea could already be a matter of the past if the border and visa regimes were dissolved. So without a radical change, it is evident at the recent tragedies in the Mediterranean Sea will be followed by many more deaths. And we are going to speak about this today also. So this is what is Alarm Phone is doing as a whole.
Yes, and unfortunately, as Hela just said, much of our work is also about dealing with trying to prevent death at sea, but sometimes we do not manage. And particularly in this time, it's been particularly dramatic to see how many European institutions, media outlets, different kind of organizations have been mobilizing against institutional racism, against police violence, against the murder, the killing of Black people by the police. And at the same time, this week and the previous weeks, as alarm phone activists, we were experiencing deaths at sea and deaths that were kept invisible and that nobody was talking about. In particular, this Saturday, on the 13th of June, there was a very large demonstration here in Brighton, a Black Lives Matter demonstration. And many of us from our team here could not attend because we were on the phone with authorities trying to force them to intervene to rescue a boat in distress. But unfortunately, the Libyan authorities denied that there was a boat in distress, and 15 people lost their lives. 20 more people who were on that boat were rescued by a fisherman who brought them back to Libya. So this is a very important historical moment to talk about these things. And for me, the 13th of June has been a very conflicting day, because on the one hand, I could hear protesters marching Black Lives Matter. And on the other hand, I felt that in the moment where we heard that those 15 people were drowning in the Mediterranean, I knew that nobody would tell their names, that nobody will be able to see their faces, nobody will be able to protest against this death, or just a very small group of people will be able to talk about this because of the constant attempts by authorities to deny shipwrecks, to deny deaths at sea, and to tell lies about what is happening in the Mediterranean in order to hide their responsibility.
Yes, and also during this week, there was a shipwreck in FACS. So on the Tuesday, 9th of June, some fishermen alerted the authorities that there were about 20, like from 20 to 30 bodies near Kerkena, which is an island in Sfax. So most of them are sub-Saharan Africans, and at first the authorities did not said that they were patrol the area, search for this for the people, because they got alerted that there was a boat out in the sea, and but they did not find anything, and later on, 3 days after we have these bodies, at first they said it is a boat carrying 53 people, but then more and more bodies of people were found near the coasts of Sfax in different cities. And so the number was actually higher than 53 and was up to 61 person. Regarding this, we don't know, we know nothing about this. We just know numbers of people. We don't have any information. The government is refusing to give any information, is not giving, as usual, not enough information. And the only thing that is being said, as usual, okay, we have risk, like we have found a certain amount, like certain number of people, and then we move on and we go, and it's another shipwreck, and and then life continues for other people, but not for these people.
Yeah, and
so
something.
yeah.
Another shipwreck we've been both following up on was a shipwreck that happened on the 9th of February, where when a boat with 91 people on board called the alarm phone. And again, also in that case, we alerted the authorities, but they refused to intervene, and they later on denied that a shipwreck happened. And the result of this denials, of this silence, is that since the 9th of February, every week, on average, we receive a call or a message from a relative who is looking for a missing person. And we have been, in the last 4 months, we've been working around the clock to try to give a name, to give a face to the 91 people who drowned in that shipwreck. And we could only do it by speaking with the families and with the friends of some of the people we knew of. And so far, in 4 months, we've been able to give a name and a face to less than 30 people. And just today I was having a discussion with a friend of someone who drowned, and with the brother of another person who drowned, and they were telling me, we cannot say that they're dead. We can only say that they're missing, because the brother said, how can I tell my mother that her son is dead and I don't have a body for her to cry on? So this shows the violence that this silence produces, not only on the people who drown at sea, but also on the families, the mothers, the brothers, the sisters of the people who go missing, and that for months cannot give a closure and cannot start grieving their loved ones. So what European authorities are doing through their silence is actively making these lives ungrievable and these names unspeakable.
Yes, and the other problem is that, for example, in Tunisia, people have been active in searching for their sons, brothers, friends, and it's whether the Italian authorities or the Tunisian authorities did not give any information, did not provide any help to people who have been searching for their sons since 2008, since 2010, and since 2011. And it's, you just feel like it's not our sons, it's not our problem, it's their problem, and it's everybody is giving the responsibility to another one, or to another state. Every country is giving the responsibility to another country, yet I think they are not aware that it's their responsibility, like both of them. And it's very sad knowing that probably these shipwrecks will even be less hurt than the ones that happened in Tunisia, simply because these people who left, whether from Tunisia or Libya, don't have their relatives here. They are not Tunisian nationals, so that many NGOs can speak about it. They are invisible here and invisible in the other side of the Mediterranean.
Yeah, and one event that became visible and attracts a lot of public attention was the Easter weekend pushback to Libya, where a boat was left to die at sea for days. There were several boats in those days that were left to die at sea due to the COVID-19 pandemic, or not due to the COVID pandemic, but using the COVID pandemic as an excuse. European authorities, well, Italy and Malta, declared their harbors closed to migrants in distress and withdrew rescue operations from the Mediterranean Sea. And in that weekend, we spent, I think we never slept. We spent every hour trying to put pressure, trying to call, trying to get in touch with the people on the boats, and relaying to the authorities their updated GPS positions, and they were just telling us our ports are closed. We were on the phone with people who were telling us that they were dying at sea, and there was nothing we could do to support them. And one of these boats was eventually rescued by an NGO, Aitamari, while another boat was taken back to Libya by a fishing vessel sent by the Maltese authorities. And there has been a lot of silence and a lot of lies on what happened during those days. And for us, it's been almost impossible to reconstruct what actually happened until a woman a group of women who were who survived and who were put into prison in Libya reached out and told us their story. And she, in particular, one woman who could speak English, she communicated with the outside world with a hidden phone that she had into the prison where she's held, and with several voice messages, she clearly reconstructed everything that happened in those days when they were at sea, when they were pushed back to Libya, and she clearly reconstructed how 12 people died in those days. And for me, it is incredible how her voice recorded on this hidden phone from a prison became a weapon against the lies and the silence of European authorities and European coast guards, to the point that thanks to her reconstruction, well, due to her reconstruction, someone in Malta started a public inquiry against the Prime Minister, accusing him of a murder of the 12 people that died at sea. so despite her powerful voice escaping from that prison in a way, the public inquiry had very expectable results. The Maltese authorities denied the responsibility of Malta in the events, and of course they just said that they did their job as they could and so on. And unfortunately, and this is another case where a powerful woman voice speaks up against violence and state responsibility in this violence, and not only she's not believed, but she's also kept in prison for the time being. Something that
that we like, I think also there's something that we always experience during our shifts and during communications with people who are on the boat, is that even though it's not very common to speak to women, directly, it's usually men who are responsible for this, for the phone and contacting authorities and us. But generally it is women. When we speak to women, they are generally very calm. They try to control the situation, try to calm everybody else who are on the boat. They know what to do. They really try to understand that we in the end are not a rescue vessel, but more of a hotline which alarms the authorities. And and so even if they tell us that they are sick and they want to make it, and the women try always to calm people down and be there for other people who are on the boat, not only for themselves. I think this is very important and powerful and strengthening for us, for me also. I don't know what,
and
if you have another experience.
When there is a lot of confusion on the boat and we cannot understand what is going on, it's now become a common practice to ask the men we're speaking to actually let us speak to a woman. So this became a common practice in the alarm phone when there is panic on board. And also often we try to understand what are the health conditions of the people on board and how many women and children are there. And often we get more accurate information about the presence of women and children and their conditions when we actually speak to women. Something that I could not understand about these events and about the treatment of people who were pushed back was the fact that we still haven't been able to actually talk to the men that were pushed back in the Easter weekend. Although the men and the women are in the same prison, they're in separate areas. And we've been told that the men have been put in an area where they do not have access to the outside because the Libyan authorities or whoever is keeping them in prison do not want them to talk about what happened, while women were kept in a less restricted area. Where they could have a little bit more of communication with the outside. And this is also how this woman managed to have access to a phone and to reach out. And in the moment I couldn't understand how this was possible, but later I understood that, recently I was reading an article by Rebecca Hall, Black feminist who writes about revolts on slave ships in the transatlantic slave trade. And she describes how revolts on these ships were mostly occurring when there were women on board. And one of the main reasons, according to her, in this beautiful article called Not Killing Me Softly, she explains how enslaved men were kept in chains on the ships, while women had more possibility to move on the ship. They were not enchained for several reasons. But in this way, they also had access to the weapons on board, and this access to the weapons allowed them to stage even violent revolts on the ships. For me, this is a very interesting parallelism, maybe a bit academic, I don't know, but seeing the fact that at a time, as much as now, 200 years later, the authorities, or at the time the slave traders, were not seeing women as potential dangerous actors or as potential political actors who can organize a revolt, who can resist, who can speak out to authorities. And how consistently throughout history, their presence and their role in these forms of resistance and insurrection has been erased. So as much as on those ships, women were able to access the area of a ship with weapons, well, also today, although imprisoned, they had the capacity to reach a phone and to use it as a weapon against the Maltese state that killed 12 of their friends who were on board with them. And in both cases, women were not considered as potential political actors who could have a voice and who could have capacity to organize politically. And of course, across histories, women managed to prove these beliefs very wrong.
What is crazy is that women they are facing this violence, different kinds of violence, not only by authorities, but so-called humanitarian international organizations, as for example, in Tunisia, many migrant women, they were put in centers along with other men, where that we know, everybody knows that it's not a safe space for them. And also there's not, they are not, like these humanitarian organizations such as mainly UNHCR are not really taking care of these women. We have women who have children, and the access to a doctor is denied, for example. We have other women who have almost been kicked out of the center, and fortunately, with the coronavirus, they were not able to kick her out, even if she has 2 daughters. One is 1 year and a half, and the other one is 3 years old, I think. And but also, like, it is amazing how the women here the migrant women here, mainly who are in the south, are trying to organize many sports events for refugees, many cultural events with different children who are in these centers, even if this kind of events is prohibited by the UNHCR, and the UNHCR isn't allowing them to do so. But it's also amazing to see this women organizing protests, taking her child in her arms and going out and demanding her rights in a very hard and harsh context where the UNHCR has all power almost. These women also have, like, their asylum has been denied, and since then they are not being taken care of from any international organization and UN organization, and yet they continue to fight. They continue to fight the sexism, the violence that they are facing in their jobs, in the streets, in everywhere. And the sexism it's a sexism mixed up with racism. And the problem is that me, as a woman who has a Tunisian nationality, if I want to make a complaint, I will go to the police station. I have this right to go to the police station and denounce harassment in the street or any other kind of violence. But these women don't have access. They don't speak the language. They don't feel safe near the police. They are afraid of deportations. And so with all this, what is happening, at the same time, feminist groups and feminist NGOs are making migrant women invisible. They are not present in the demands. They are not invited in protests. They are not invited to take part of organizing protests or demanding rights. But they also say that it's they should demand. But we have to understand that Tunisia is a very different context and culture from another person who comes, for example, from Ivory Coast, and they cannot necessarily understand the country that easily, especially that the politics, like the Tunisian politics regarding migration is more in the kicking people out, like in deporting, in not giving access to any right, in not like giving them any kind of security, and not integrating them. Like it is a whole politic, and the feminist groups don't understand this, and so they usually blame others, while we can't ask others to come if we don't invite them, and if we don't include them, and if we don't give them a voice to be heard. And this is so a huge problem for me to see in every meeting I have been, in every action, in every protest I have been, in every protest demanding about women's rights or denouncing violence. There is no single migrant woman, there is no single demand for migrant women. We don't see them, we don't hear them, and it's mainly our fault.
Yeah, so it is clear, and sorry if we are a little bit over time and a little bit unhappy. But it is clear that often in activist circles, Black women are made invisible. It is also clear how official humanitarian organizations like the UNHCR, the Red Cross, etc., often trap women into their assistance politics, where you can only receive assistance if you are a suffering woman. As a report Women on the Move clearly shows, in all areas of the Mediterranean, women are classified according to their suffering when they receive assistance, and in a way they become prisoners of the organizations that allegedly take care of them. They're spied upon and surveilled in their aspect of their lives, and if they decided to disobey this role of a suffering victim, then they're kicked out of the programs, or they're asked to leave the camps, or they are criminalized in formal and informal ways. The images of women bodies are also used extensively by humanitarian organization and humanitarian language to mobilize empathy and compassion for people on the move, for women on the move, and this image is often put in contrast to the ordinary image of young men on the move, which in a way creates a dichotomy that is problematic, and a representation that keep on silencing, patronizing, and pacifying, dehumanizing women as just vulnerable victims instead of political actors. And one last thing that I'd like to say is that also the militarization of borders is often legitimized by authorities as an effort to protect women from trafficking networks. So the criminalization of people's movements, the prevention of safe passage is legitimized as a war against trafficking and as a humanitarian move towards women that needs to be protected. But we know, we all know, and it is clear that this militarization of borders does not protect anyone, let alone women, but instead amplifies the forms of patriarchal violence women are subjected to. However, we've talked a lot about death, we've talked about violence of a border, but I guess for us it's important that to always place the focus on women's struggle, and that while women on the move face multiple forms of invisible and visible patriarchal and racist violence at the borders of Europe, which make border crossings even more dangerous and more lethal for women. We also know, and we always have to keep in mind, that women on the move are more than what they are constantly reduced to, and that they bear a power and a strength that no border is able to defeat, and they will keep on speaking and struggling.
Yes. Black lives matter, Black women lives matter, and Black lives matter in the Mediterranean.
Yes. Thank you, Hela.
Thank you, Diana.
And thanks everyone for listening. And sorry if we were not so cheerful.
Well, they can forgive us.
We will put the links to the Women on the Move reports nearby, the link to this recording, so that everyone can access it.
Yes, which also highlights the situation in the Aegean Sea and Western Med, but me and Diana, we are only in the Central Med group, so that's why the talk was more focused on the Central Mediterranean.
Yes, and thank you for Feminist Autonomous Center for Research for hosting us, and we really hope to meet you in person soon and to speak to all of you soon.
Yeah, thank
Bye.
you. Ciao.